Is Brooke Hall, and I'm doing Failure to Thrive in Infants. Failure to thrive, is not necessarily a disease or a disorder. It's just a situation where a child is undernourished and does not receive or process enough calories. So this could be two things. They're either not eating enough, they're not able to eat enough, or they are eating enough, but their body isn't processing the calories like they should. And they don't usually, this leads to them not reaching the standard of growth appropriate for their age. And also, failure to thrive is usually diagnosed during infancy, which is why I chose to focus on infants for this presentation. In regards to the standard of growth appropriate, you can find charts that kind of talk about that online or through a doctor. Symptoms of failure to thrive include lack of weight gain, delays in reaching developmental milestones. So this kind of makes sense in that if a child isn't gaining the weight that they should, then they're not going to be able to learn to lift their neck up. They're not going to be able to learn to roll over on their own. They're not going to be able to learn to crawl because they can't support their bodies enough until later on in life. So all these developmental milestones are going to be delayed. They also could experience lack of affect, which is when you're not expressing any emotion. The baby just has a straight face all the time. They don't even cry very much. They don't seem happy. And then another symptom is fatigue. So the child may be sleeping a lot just because their body isn't using those calories so that they can create energy. And if you have delays in reaching developmental milestones, it would also make sense that puberty is delayed later on as well. Sometimes failure to thrive is actually diagnosed through blood tests, urine tests, x-rays, and developmental screening. But I would say probably it would be really common for it to be diagnosed just through records of weight and height for the child. That may be included in developmental screening, but developmental screening could also include in terms of kind of cognitive development screening. So testing how well the baby is tracking stuff with their eyes and things like that. That could all also be delayed in failure to thrive. It is estimated that up to 5 in 100 infants and children in the United States have failure to thrive. So some people may assume that failure to thrive could be mostly due to poverty rates around the world and in the United States. But it's not just that. The prevalence rate is also high in high-income families. And it shows that food insecurity is not always the reason for malnourishment. So an example of that could be if a baby is just not breastfeeding correctly. Maybe they're not able to get food from that. Maybe they can't figure out how to latch on or things like that. Then they're not going to get enough of that. Enough of those nutrients that they really need. So that would be an example of a problem that could cause FFT in high-income families. So there were several treatments mentioned, one of them being nutritional counseling. So that could just be a matter of a parent making an appointment with a nutritionist and they talk to them about possible explanations as to why this is happening and possible solutions. So they may suggest things like as followed. Breastfeed more often. or use supplemental formula for infants. So in between breastfeeding, maybe also providing formula. For older children, possible nutritional supplements, so kind of like vitamins, could be useful. And then also providing calorie-rich foods. So I think an article I read mentioned really cream-based foods, lots of carbs and things like that. And then also a kind of a really broad general resource is multidisciplinary interventions. So this could be things like home visits to make sure the child is actually being supplied with the food that they need. And establishing those parent-child relationships. So maybe if a relationship is lacking, then the caregiver, it could possibly just be kind of neglecting to feed that child, which in turn could obviously be very, very bad. And then also checking up on cognitive development, making sure that there's not some underlying reason going on with the baby's brain that they're just not eating. So a little note that I put in the bottom right corner is that growth hormones are not recommended. There's very limited research done on growth hormones, and in my opinion, kind of forcing your child's body to grow probably isn't the healthiest thing. So I do have a few resources listed here. Kidshealth.org was the main website that I talked about in my bibliography. It's a great resource in general for parents and their children, and it explores many different illnesses and diseases that a child may experience. So it actually provides an area at the top right of the page where there are different tabs that you can choose. So there's child, adolescent, and parent. So say you're looking at one specific disease, you can click on any of those tabs and they'll kind of explain the disease in terms of the age group that's viewing. So specifically, the website does not talk about failure to thrive, but it does go into depth explaining growth disorders, which can be helpful for parents. Other websites include the ones that I listed right there. Those are gonna be geared more towards adults and parents. But I would recommend that parents sit down with their child with one of these websites open and explain the illness that your child maybe wants to know about in terms of these websites. In terms of a way that the child would understand. So making sure you're giving them accurate information based on these websites, but explaining it to them in a way they would understand. Another resource could just be that you search for a therapist or a nutritionist for helping your child. So that could just be a matter of getting online and typing in nutritionist near me and things like that, and checking them out and seeing if they could be of help. So like I said, I chose infancy because one, I really like babies a lot. They're my age group of choice. But also, failure to thrive is mostly diagnosed in infants during infancy. So, talking about the average infant, in the Erikson psychosocial stage, so this is going to talk about psychosocial development, you're going to get the trust versus mistrust stage in infancy. So this is when infants are saying, are their basic needs being met? Are they getting fed? Are they getting changed? And things like that. And it also establishes the importance of the caregiver. So obviously the caregiver is the one that supplies the child with their basic needs. And if that's not being met, then they're not going to form a trusting relationship. In infancy, it's all about trusting your mother, your father, or whoever, that they're going to give you what you need. So in the Piaget cognitive stage of development, they're in the sensory motor stage. And this is when they're exploring the world through their senses. So this is why babies chew and slobber all over everything, because they're going to explore things mostly through their mouth. They have not... Sorry, I'm going to adjust here. In this stage, they haven't developed object permanence yet, which is why peekaboo is so fun for them. When you put your face, or when you put your hands over your face, they're gonna think you just completely disappeared until you make your face reappear. It's the best thing ever. And then infants are also generally very egocentric. And it's not something they do cognitively, consciously, I guess. It's just that they haven't just established the concept of the fact that I am me and you are you. It's just basically all about them. In terms of physical development, the first few months they're learning to move their head and grasp objects. And reflexes are a huge component of infancy. So one thing that I always thought was pretty funny was that some people think that when babies grasp their finger or something like that, they automatically think that they really like them, when really, if you place something in an infant's hand, they're going to it's a reflex for them to automatically grasp it. They're very fragile at this age, and 6 months and up, they're going to start to crawl and explore things on their own. So 6 months, they'll probably sit up on their own and things like that. So emotionally, infants are pretty easy to understand, and they cry when their basic needs are met. So in an FTT infant, would you expect more or less crying? And that's just something to kind of reflect on, because it could really go either way. So impacts of FFT on infant development. Oh, that should be FTT. Infancy is a crucial time of development. It's when the children are most plastic. So that's just, plasticity is just that idea that you can shape a child based on their environment and the interactions you have with them. If a child is malnourished, everything concerning development will be delayed. In terms of physical development, if the child is not getting the nutrients they need, their bodies will not meet the normal growth standards that lead to proper motor development. They will take longer to learn muscle coordination, such as lifting head or rolling over. And exploring the environment plays such a large role in cognitive development. If their motor development is delayed, they are less able to explore and they're less able to learn about their environment and kind of create those experiences that lead to proper cognitive development. And so the bottom line is everything is delayed in failure to thrive. So issues related to hospitalization. This can be kind of an obvious topic. They just don't provide sufficient opportunities for exploration and learning. They're just big, white, unstimulating boxes. So it's kind of our job to provide that stimulation for babies with colors and toys and things like that. And there's just generally a lot of tests and possibly separation from their caregivers, which can be very hard and stressful on the infant and the parents. So lastly, the child life specialist probably is going to have less specific interventions with the child with the infant, I guess, than an older child. Infants with failure to thrive are gonna be hospitalized as soon as their parents realize they're not eating right and that they seem smaller than what is normal. So this could lead to the infant being hospitalized for maybe 1 or 2 nights. So that's when the child life specialist comes in. They can provide opportunities for infants to explore in the hospital environment, even if they are immobile. So that can be things like getting face-to-face with the infant, and the child life specialist just playing with them and providing colorful toys and colorful things to look up at if they're laying on their back. Put colorful things on the ceiling, and just provide opportunities for stimulation. And also providing lots of child-directed speech. So that's going to be that high-pitched voice that babies pick up on so well. So all of this put together is going to help with that cognitive development, even if their physical development is delayed. In terms of procedural prep, doctors will probably want to do blood work and things like that. So this is when the child life specialist could continue to play with the child throughout all of this. So just providing those stimulations, waving toys in front of their faces, making happy faces, and just kind of stimulating them. And it may not totally distract them from any pain they may experience from needles or things like that, but it still helps to kind of alleviate that stress a little bit. And it's important to encourage the parents to do the same. So just generally, procedural prep is going to be relatively limited on infants as to what you can say, obviously, because they're not going to understand what you're telling them. As opposed to maybe a 5-year-old, you can say, okay, we're going to poke you with this needle now. For infants, I feel that it's best to kind of provide them with that stimulation, that good, positive stimulation while they are getting tests done. So that's my presentation. I'm sorry about any shakiness of the camera or anything like that. But yeah, if you have any questions, I posted some resources. But failure to thrive can be a very devastating disease because you can't really you can't really help them that much because you just have to figure it out with the help of a nutritionist and people like that. So hopefully you learned a few things. Thank you.